Hi, I'm Carrie Ann Stout, founder and CEO of Vinco Bar Exam Coaching. And we're here today talking with Jess, one of our recent bar exam passers, celebrating her success and getting some bar exam prep tips and tricks from her. So welcome, Jess. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
And so we'll just jump right in with some questions. And I know it's just passed the bar exam and you want me to talk about the bar exam more, but we really appreciate it. So let's jump right in with when you were, considering hiring someone to help you with the bar exam, whether it was like a coach, a tutor, a different program or something like that. What was important to you? Like, what were those things that were on your list? What were you looking for in that relationship?
Well, I think the question starts with how I studied the first time that I passed the bar exam because I took the commercial bar prep course and I did it 100% basically. I think I finished with almost 92 or 93% complete and I thought I was ready to go. And then when the scores came, I was kind of devastated because I had followed and trusted the process. So when I was looking for a coach or a tutor, I wanted to make sure that whatever they had put on my study sheet was something tailored to my studying and my studying needs. And basically someone that could just hold me accountable, because when I was doing my commercial bar prep course, it was basically a long laundry list of things that needed to get done in one day. And it's like, if I didn't get them done and no one was really down my back saying, no, you didn't get them done. And it kind of just would push over to the next day, where I knew after I had gotten my unsuccessful results the first time that I kind of need someone to, hold me accountable and be like, I need to get this done, because then otherwise I'm letting somebody else down, not just, my individual self. So when I was looking for tutors and coaches, I was really looking for a program that could step by step walk me through what exactly I needed to study on what day and when it needed to be studied. And also a company that understood that I was working 40 hours a week. So I needed just someone to be there and be like, hey, you can get through the day, even if you had a rough day at work, just do some MBE questions and you'll be fine. And just tell me what subjects I needed to study and how, basically how I needed to study it. And I know that sounds crazy, having someone say you need to study this, this, and that, but
Not to me. Obviously, that's not crazy to me.
but when you're taking a commercial course, it's just, again, it just gives you the list and it doesn't remind you to stay true to yourself and to stay true to the way that you study. And it tries to alter you. So I needed someone to cheer me on and say, no, what you're doing is correct. What you've always been doing is the right way to do it. You just need to tailor your ways to learn each subject, basically.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, right? That you get the checklist from the bar prep company, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's like, here's the the scope of coverage, here's what you need to do. But there is this fear from students to depart from the specific way the bar prep company is telling them to do it, right? So at Vinco, we're not going to be like, oh yeah, no, you don't need to worry about property, but we might tell you to go through and learn and interact with property one way and maybe with towards another way and things like that. So
right.
I think, you had a couple of interesting things, like A, sort of feeling like you wanted that more custom plan, but B, change in circumstances with the working full time and knowing that. And I love that you were working full time and that you were successful, because a lot of people come into this experience very nervous about being, particularly a repeat taker. I couldn't pass when I was doing nothing but studying for the bar exam. How could I possibly do it now that I'm
Absolutely
full time? And lots of our students do, and you're living proof of that. And so we've sort of, we're just throwing around coach and tutor interchangeably, which is something to this day I still struggle with not doing, even though I do firmly believe that there is a difference between being a coach and having having a tutor. And so if you would talk for a minute about sort of how you view the coaching relationship and how maybe you see that as different from tutoring, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So when I was looking for tutors and or coaches for the second time around, I did go to the commercial bar prep sites because they do offer just tutors, not coaches. And basically, from my understanding, a tutor is just someone, if I had a question about the law, I can kind of ask them and they would get back to me within a 24-hour window. they would grade X amount of essays and tell me again on the law if the law was correct. It was basically just a relationship that existed on grading some essays and letting me know if I was wrong or right if I had a question on the law. Where with coaching, it was literally, I think my coach has become like my best friend, I feel like, because I had issues. Like, I was working full time. There were days that I didn't want to do anything. There were days that I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning to study. There were days that I didn't want to wake up when that alarm went off. And I just went to my coach and I was like, I'm having an off day. Like, what should I do? And my dog got really sick during bar prep. She was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. So there were days that I had to take her to the hospital. She was in an oxygen tank for a week during bar prep. So it was like, and she was my little best friend. So it's like, I felt like my world was falling apart there, and I was still working full time while this was all happening. And I was like, I still need to study for the bar exam. And my coach was just there for me. I mean, of course, when I had questions on the law, she answered them. When I had questions on essays or MPTs, she answered them. She was always there, but mostly she was there to be there for me when I was like, my life was, rough and had, a rough patch. And I just feel like a tutor possibly would not do that, just because it was a strict relationship between the law and the bar exam, where the coach really helped me. She really pushed me. She was amazing. She just told me that I have to trust the process. I have to trust what I'm doing. Everything I'm doing is fine. And I'm going to have these off days, but I'm going to see them through, because the work that I have done so far is going to outweigh the bad week that I might have had, or the bad couple of hours I might have had in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And that was something that was really amazing. And especially even after the bar exam, I was extremely stressed out. I have bad anxiety.
Jurisdiction took their sweet time releasing your results this time too. So
yeah, my jurisdiction was one of the last jurisdictions to release their results, and I had really bad anxiety. I had anxiety after the test because I started second guessing myself. As the same, I do it all the time when I take a test. It's just my nature. I always second guess, and especially leading up to the test, I had really bad anxiety, especially when other jurisdictions had been released. And my coach was just there for me. She just knew what to say. She knew how to calm me down. And it was just awesome that even after the bar exam, I also had that support that I had during the bar exam.
Yeah, I say, like, we're we got you guys to drink the Kool-Aid. Like, once you're in, you're in. It's like, people think, oh, we'll do the bar, and then, like, that's it. No, we keep you around forever. Yeah. But I think, like, you hit on a good point, which is like that tutoring, and I kind of think of it this way too, is generally more limited in scope, right? It's like, it's for something like, oh, I want MBE tutoring, or I want substance tutoring, or I want essay tutoring. And it's not, listen, we don't hate on anything at Vinco, because I mean, if you're in the world of custom bar prep, like, you have to believe that different things are going to work for different people, right? And so some people might have that very specific problem, but right. I think you just did a really nice job characterizing essentially that nothing is really off limits when you're working with us and with a Vinco coach. Like, we're looking at, actually your coach, Steph, recently coined the term, like, we treat the whole student, which I laughed at and mocked her for, but genuinely, like, that is what we do. We're looking at, like, we know that, like, your dog being sick can have just as big of an impact on your MBE scores as you not knowing the law. And if not, maybe a bigger impact on days right. happening, right? And so really being there from, like, the first day that you join up as being part of the community through the results and beyond, you're going to have that ongoing relationship. So I think that was really helpful. And
yes,
you brought up before that this was not your first time passing the bar exam. And I know for a fact that it is really helpful for students out there to hear, like, what were the big changes you made? Like, if you could point to, like, 1 to 3 things, like, you don't go crazy, but, like, what are those, like, big changes you made? And I think, Jess, actually, that your advice is going to be very interesting, because you're a person who had done practice questions before. So that's the number one thing I usually hear is, like, I didn't do enough practice questions.
Right.
That wasn't your thing. So I'll be very interested to hear, like, what you sort of credit the changes as being right. on the time you passed. Yeah.
So I'll be flat out honest. MBE is not my strong point. I don't think it ever will be my strong point. I did a lot of MBE questions the first time. I did over 2,000. I did over 3,000 the second time, and there still was not a large improvement in my score, but there was an improvement. So that's a plus. Right. But I think what really, really targeted and helped me the second time around is when I was in law school, I'm a very visual person. I like colors. I like to write. I like to write out my outlines. I like to make charts, like handwrite my charts. And when I studied the first time around, I did not do that because the commercial bar, company had, I don't want to name drop anyone.
We've had people, don't worry, it's fine. We're not saying they're bad. We're just saying that that was not what you needed at that time.
Right. So when I was doing my commercial bar prep, there was lectures and I was watching these lectures for 4.5 hours. I was pausing videos, and I know that's the worst thing you can do, but I like to write. So I was writing everything. So when I was writing things, I was pausing. I learned that if you take your earphone out, it pauses the video for you. So I didn't have to touch my screen. I was doing this whole thing, and in the long run, looking back, it did not work for me. So the second time I made charts, I took the time to outline my condensed outlines. I took the time to make, the colorful charts and notes that I needed to make. I really sat down and took that time. So instead of spending 5 hours in a lecture, I spent 5 hours outlining a condensed outline that was given to me from a commercial bar prep course. And at first, I think my first time around, I was genuinely scared to do something like that. And, I never learned orally in class. And I was scared that if I didn't watch the videos the first time, I was going to be a failure. I wasn't going to do well. So I stuck to the plan, like I had mentioned before. And I think this time around, it was really important for me to learn that, hey, you don't need to stick to the plan that's given to you. You need to stick to your plan that works for you, that has always worked for you, and that will continue to work for you. And for me, that was writing everything. There were days that I couldn't feel my hand. There were days that I'm sitting here like this, airing my hand out because it's hurting. But it helped so much. So much in the long run. If I look for my score from the first time and my score from the second time, I never expected to improve as much as I improved. And I think it's just because I sat down and I learned the material like Jessica needed to learn the material, and not like someone else told me how I need to learn the material.
Did you score really high on visual when you took the learning styles quiz too?
I did. It was visual and writing and reading, I think might have. Yeah. So,
and also seems like you had a sense, right? So that we encourage all the students to start off with a learning styles quiz because that gives us a jumping off point. But also you knew, right? You already had that sense that using the more visual, the colors, the charts, doing those things by hand, you already had that sense from law school. And I think this is a really interesting conversation because if anyone who's watching this video has watched some of the other ones, you've heard a lot about practice questions, to the point where I've been joking that I'm not paying you guys to talk about the importance of practice questions, but that this is truly about figuring out your thing. And like Jess is saying, her thing was more figuring out how to learn the substance better. And so hearing that there's different points, we've heard other people talk about not having done enough with the essays and figuring out that system. So that really is a big turnaround thing. Is there anything else that you feel really a big change or difference for you?
I actually did work on MEEs, and I've always been a good writer. I was on moot court. I was an English major in college. So writing has always been a very strong point for me, but writing how I think writing is and writing for the bar exam is much, much different.
I always joke that English majors are my worst nightmare when I'm working in the academic success world, because you are excellent writers. IRACing is not writing. IRACing is not writing. And it's because your head against the wall.
They teach you, flowery language, adjectives, adverbs, throw everything into a sentence to make it sound. No. So I think I really needed to work on that because I needed to teach myself how to just get to the point with something, how to say, this is the issue, this is the rule, this is the exception to the rule and the exception to the rule, and this is how it applies to that fact pattern. And I think that Vinco really helped me with that because I didn't really learn how to outline an essay for the bar exam. It wasn't a strong point in a commercial bar prep course because I personally think that they focus on MBE, which is fine, but there are students that also need to focus on the MEE, I think. Everyone's different. So I really sat down and was really able to learn how to issue spot and write an MEE this time. And now they're one of my favorite things to do because I feel like I learned how to be able to express myself in a way that I used to when I was writing as an English major or writing in law school, but just for the bar examiner's liking, basically.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's that sort of figuring out the test in some ways, right? It's like, it's not, but that is, it's really funny that you say that, because that's one of the first things I start with is like, when I teach 1Ls, I start with let's start with the premise that you're all good writers, because you got into law school, so you probably are. Now let's throw writing out the window, because we're not writing here, we're IRACing. And so that really,
Right.
like a deprogramming that has to go on with the IRACing, particularly for the bar exam, because it's not pretty. It's 30 minutes or 45 minutes for the writing part of an MPT. You really only have enough time to be informational, not fancy. And so that certainly is a big change to me.
Absolutely.
And so I know that you really liked working with your coach, as you mentioned before. And part of the reason to do these videos is obviously to share helpful tips and tricks with students, but also to give them a feel for what it's like to be part of the Vinco community. So if you had to say, like, what was your favorite thing about your experience of working with Vinco, or why somebody else might want to work with us, what would that be?
Honestly, the community of students, and the coaches, but the community of students, we were really a community. It's like, if we had a question, we could ask each other. We had partners, and my partner she was amazing. She was rooting me on, I was rooting her on. We had questions to each other. We were keeping each other motivated. Even after the bar exam, we were, checking in on each other, making sure everybody was okay. And it's just nice to have people in your corner that are going through the same thing as you, that are not trying to compete with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the bar exam, law school, the world basically is a competition. And it was just so nice to have a group of 20 people in my corner going through the same thing as me, cheering me on, saying, you got this, you're going to get it this time. It was amazing. And I studied with people the first time, and I just did not have that support that I had the second time going around. And I think the support and the confidence that Vinco gave me was the reason why, it attributed to my studying, and it attributed to my performance on the days of the bar exam. Because on the days I was in my car and I wasn't as nervous the first time that I took it, I was like, I got this. I was like, I know what I have to do. I know what I have to go in there and do. I'm not going to get distracted. And, Vinco helped me with that mindset, and the students and the coaches helped me get into that mindset. So I think everything in conjunction really it's like a one movement kind of thing. You need them all to interact with one another for you to produce something great at the end.
And I love that, like the community aspect of it, because it's something that, like, that's not accidental. Like, I spend, as sort of like the leader of this movement here, I spend a lot of time like cultivating that and choosing that. And a large number of our students are referred to us from former students. So I think it's no coincidence or surprise that the community grows at a good and steady rate, but also with people who like gel and get along and have personalities, because like we love our students, and so if they're referring their friends and coworkers who they like, we're gonna love them too. And that's really intentional to I start with the premise that we can all pass the bar exam. First of all, you're all sitting in, you're not all sitting in the same jurisdiction. It's not zero sum game. It's different. I've had other students, and when I've been doing these interviews, who said, like, when I was studying right after law school and still in that law school environment, even though we weren't competing with each other, it's hard to shake that law school curve final exam feel about it. And that this feels different, because they're not your classmates. They're not those people who you were competing with. So, that's great. And so my last question for you is, now you've passed the bar exam, people are going to ask you for sure for bar exam advice. I can guarantee you that. And so if you had 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes to talk to someone, and you could only give them one, maybe two tops pieces of advice, what would you say? Like, you must do this to pass the bar exam.
My biggest thing to tell somebody, and I will literally tell this to somebody on the street that I see taking the bar exam, because it happened to me last weekend, is to study the way you studied in law school. Don't defer to the commercial bar prep course telling you and force feeding you what you need to do. If you don't think you need to attend a lecture because you are decent in tort law and you think that going through the condensed outline that's given to you is just enough, then do it. The condensed outline is exactly what's given to you in the lecture. So it's almost the same thing, just double. So just study the way you studied in law school, because you went through 3 or 4 years of, of what, of studying of finals of papers, and you learned and grew and figured out yourself and how to study. So keep true to that because it's going to help you through. And my next piece of advice would be definitely to do practice questions, because I feel like I learned I learned all of the law, mostly all of the law, from doing practice questions. Yes, I outlined. Yes, I took my outlines and I condensed those outlines and condensed those outlines and condensed those outlines. But at the end of the day, what I ended up doing was taking those outlines and taking all those questions that I did, whether they be missed or I had a question on them or I got the law right but didn't understand why. I ended up weaving the two together and making like one mass outline. And just from all that law, it was insane how much law I knew just from taking those two aspects and merging them together.
And, you really just hit on something. I said this earlier today, and I actually say this frequently, that like my life's mission is to get students to understand that practice and learning the law are not two different things. Like I shouted from the rooftops. Yep. I talk about this all the time, and you just did a really great job of summarizing how that works, like how you do learn the law through the practice questions, and that's so important. And also on your initial point of like do what worked for you in law school, I also think students need to pay attention to the flip side of that, which is like if you know that something they're telling you to do in bar prep was like a trap for you in law school, if you knew just like listening to lectures and taking notes in law school was like not helpful to you, don't do something you actively know doesn't work, right? Like you're taking it to the next level. I'm even saying like one step ahead of that. Make sure that you're not actively doing things that you know aren't going to work for you. So
absolutely.
Really great and like really helpful advice. Thank you so much for taking
of course
the time out to chat with me today. And for those of you out there who might be interested in learning more about Vinco and what we do, you can find us at vincoprep.com, and I will see you next time.